it. Uh, and thanks for being here. And as Heather said, I love interaction. I love to hear from you. Some of you are here to just kind of soak in some information and get something out of it, and that's fine. There's no pressure. But if anybody wants to, you can chat with your fingers, or I'd love to hear from you out loud. We can have a discussion. We can hear your thoughts, what's working for you. So you're the brave souls. I'm guessing since you're here for one of a few reasons. Either you love the holidays and it's never too early to talk about them. So you're the ones that when you go to the store right now at Smith's or Walmart or whatever, you probably like are totally great with the fact that everything's now Christmas. Maybe that's you. Or you're the opposite and you kind of dread it and you're here to deal with the fact that you dread it and you're here to kind of get ahead of all the stress that it causes you. Either way, we're here for you and we're going to embrace it. We're going to jump right in. I mean, look, you got a Christmas tree right in front of you just to get things started. So we're going to talk about the overall ways that we can reduce our stress over the holidays, but focus a little bit more as we get into it on the financial aspect of that, because that's one of the biggest stressors, I think we all agree, of the holidays is dealing with the financial stress. So with that, again, please don't hesitate to chime in with your chat questions and we'll answer them as we go and have a good discussion. So I'm going to start by one of my very favorite, and actually this isn't the one that's my favorite. This one's all right, but we'll get later into my favorite. Here is a little video clip just to get us in the right mood. Uh-oh.
So
I know. Harry.
no,
Racing. Thinking. Life is it.
no. Welcome Christmas, come this way. Welcome Christmas, Christmas Day. Welcome, welcome, Father Ramos. Welcome, welcome, Father Ramos. Christmas Day is in our grasp. So long as we have hands to clasp.
All right. Did we get you in the holiday spirit? Are you ready now? Or are you going, wow, that's way too early. I'm still putting Halloween away, right, at my house. So one of the reasons I brought that up is we all heard the story. I think many of us have heard the story of the Grinch. Anybody want to share what was the main point of the story? What was sort of the moral of the story of the Grinch who stole Christmas? That's kind of at the end of the movie, what we just saw, and it's the Kumbaya moment where the Grinch is reformed and his heart grew 3 sizes, I think, something like that. And he's found the joy of Christmas. But what led to that? What was the moral of the story? Anybody want to chime in on that?
It's not all about the like the presents and the gifts. It's more about who you surround yourself with. That makes it a jolly time of year, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's a cute story, but it's hopefully that's the point, is that he stole Christmas and he stole all their stuff and he thought that would make him miserable. And then when he heard him singing anyway, at first it drove him mad. And then he realized, wait a minute, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not about tons of gifts and stuff and spending all the money and all the finance, the worldly kind of presence and stuff. It's really about something purer than that. It's about coming together and loving your people and just all the things that can be about. And that's true for, I think, all the holidays, Thanksgiving, if you celebrate Hanukkah, all the other things that kind of come this time of year. It's really about something deeper. And I think we do well when we don't do what the Grinch did and figure that out kind of at the end. Because I think we all believe that, but sometimes we don't get to that conclusion until like December 25th or 26th, and you've already done the damage. And so I think we do well to remember that early, to capture the spirit of the season. And that's one of the ways that we'll keep ourselves in check financially, and ways we'll keep our stress down, is to sort of focus on the main purpose. So are you feeling like the halls are decking you, or do you not feel so jolly? I'd love to hear from you, what brings you here. So as you get started, if you would throw in chat kind of what it is that brought you here, what you're hoping to take away from this experience. So some of you might say, I just feel like I overspend. Some of you are going to say, I feel like I lose sight of it and I hate Christmas. Maybe some of you have some bad memories, it's not always, and this can be a time where people feel pretty down because everyone else is having joy, and you feel kind of something missing in your life. So if anybody's willing to share, I would love to know what your thoughts are, what brought you here, on how to manage it. So I already heard from somebody looking on budgeting. So we're going to get into that. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that is an important piece here. So keep them coming if you want. I'd love to see what your thoughts are. But as I'm waiting for those, I'll go ahead and just kind of give an oversight. We won't spend too much time on this because I know you want to get into some of the meat and potatoes, what we hopefully can do about this. But someone else said, I feel like I overspend because I have 2 little kids and want to have an amazing Christmas, but you hate crowds and shopping. Love gifts, but it's a tighter year for us due to both husband and yourself being in the same industry. It can be tough times right now. There's been inflation. We've had high gas prices. There's lots of financial, the markets are down. So there's a lot of indicators making it really a tough year for people. So all the comments I'm seeing so far mostly are about the financial aspect of that. Activity perfect, pleasing everyone, want to make it magical but never can do enough. Yeah, so there's that stress element too. Thank you for sharing your comments, everyone. So as some of you have already pointed out in some of your comments, relationships are one of the trigger points of holidays. It's all that togetherness and it can be so great, but it also can create a lot more opportunity for strain and problems. That brother that you've been avoiding, he's going to be around, or just because of the stress of things, new problems can come up. So all those expectations, and for some people it's the opposite. It's the loneliness is intensified. You see other people around you enjoying family and stuff, and maybe you've lost someone, or you just feel lonely. So those can put a strain on you. We're going to talk about finances, but let's give it an overview. We do tend to overspend. It's what Dave Ramsey used to call the great surprise every year. We all forget, we don't budget for it. And, oh yeah, that's right. My budget has to go up by 300% during the holidays. And we kind of don't always plan for that. And there's that pressure to keep up with the neighbors. I think some of you alluded to that. It's hard when your kids' friends are getting Xboxes, PlayStations, and new, fancy skateboards and the greatest thing. And you feel like your budget is a wooden horseshoe, or wooden horse, or I don't know, like something that you couldn't, it's not going to be very expensive. So those can be real pressures and stresses. Different opinions. Maybe some of you, I know I was raised in a home that giving gifts was a love language. My parents loved to do gifts. So that's why, for me, it's kind of passed on. Like I feel like I want to do nice things for my kids. And even if the neighbors didn't, it's more about, I just want to do it, Sometimes you feel entitled to, like it's like you're right. And then, of course, the lack of planning that goes into that. There's the physical demands of just shopping and the preparation, cold weather, getting sick. We've talked about that. Overeating and under exercising, a lot of bad health habits can come around this time of year. So the key that I think is important, and maybe I'm preaching to the choir because you were thoughtful enough to come to this, tells me something about you. Either you have a habit of planning ahead, because here it is November 9th, and you're giving this a lot of thought to be here, or you don't have that habit and you're trying to break it. Either way, that puts you, I think the fact that you're here speaks well for you and for your preparation. But I would say right now, create the image of what you aspire for. Not, and when I say that, I don't mean this high expectation of the picket fence and the amazing, Berlin Ives scene, the one you see right in front of you. I'm talking about a realistic, warm experience. And then I'm going to talk later about what we do with that. But you start by creating kind of like, what is the spirit of what I want to accomplish? And as you do that, you might discover how important really gifts are to you, and not wait till you get to the store to decide how important gifts are to you. This is my favorite. I know some people love it, some people hate it, but here's a clip from my favorite.
Santa. Who the heck are you?
What are you talking about? I'm Santa Claus.
No, you're not.
Why, of course I am.
You're Santa. What song did I sing for you on your birthday this year?
Happy birthday, of course. So, how old are you, son?
Oh,
You're a big boy. What's your name?
Oh.
And what can I get you for Christmas?
Don't tell him what you want. He's a liar.
Let the kid talk.
You disgust me. How can you live with yourself?
Just cool it, Zippy.
You sit on a throne of lies.
Look, I'm not kidding.
You're a fake.
I'm a fake?
Yes.
How'd you like to be dead? Huh? He's kidding.
You stink.
I think you're gonna have a good Christmas, all right?
I like beef and cheese. You don't smell like Santa.
Okay.
Oh. He's a fake.
I think I saw some of those kids in therapy after that. That's the poor kids got traumatized by Santa Claus fighting with an elf, but I love that. I love Elf. One of the things I love about the movies of Christmas is that it does every one of them is about finding the true spirit of things. I think it's a good reminder, right? So when I say that, I think you should decide what you want your season to be about up front. I think that's something you do, and then there's something else you have to do with that. Then you've got to roll with what really happens. There's always what you plan, and then there's what happens. And so much of our distress comes from the gap between those, like this Berlin Ives beautiful scene, and then like the chaos. And I think when we can hope for and plan for something great, and then roll with what happens. So by planning, we're moving towards something. But our ability to adapt and roll with the narrative that you're presented is what, in the end, becomes for our emotional well-being. So, for example, you might have anticipated a romance, a Hallmark movie approach to Christmas, but instead it becomes a comedy or a drama or maybe a tragedy, right? So you roll with kind of what you're given. And that adaptability and kind of and rolling with it, when someone gets sick and you miss a party, when somebody uh, you know, rolls in from out of town, and cousin Eddie experience, right? When he rolls in from out of town and decides to park in your front yard with his RV and make things worse. It's that ability to do that. So, if any of you have heard the serenity prayer, it's a good time to adopt and live by it. To accept, to have the serenity to accept the things you cannot change, the courage to change things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? And I think that's really where I see when I work with people, when people really find their peace with how the holiday season goes. And then, and as you do that, that you don't judge yourself by what your neighbors do and what others do and the movie image. You go by your intentions, your best efforts, and having more healthy expectations for yourself. So I'm going to start with some general tips, and then we're going to get a little bit more into some of the financial tips. Okay. So, first of all, acknowledging your feelings. This is not a time of year to pretend. There's something to be said about putting aside some of those feelings at times, but you can't do it until you acknowledge what's there. You can't put aside what you haven't really acknowledged. I mean, does that make sense? Like, otherwise it's more like you're just running into it all the time, clumsily, instead of proactively addressing it and kind of deciding where to put it. So, as I've worked with people with trauma and grief and panic attacks, I've always felt that the first step is to acknowledge and deal with and accept yourself for what you feel. So if you find yourself feeling down and sad, and you're like, I'm supposed to be happy. It's that supposed to stuff that intensifies the loneliness or the depression. Because you're like, not only now am I depressed, but I'm depressed about being depressed. Like, I feel bad about it. But what we can actually shorten the lifespan of our sad feelings, and we just let them be there with us, and just to say, I know it doesn't seem like ideal, but here I am. I'm sad, and that's okay. That's what I'm feeling. And by just letting that kind of flow through us, sometimes it can find its way out. And then allow for and seek support. Seek out family, friends, and other supports. And then, of course, I've kind of already harped on this a lot, but be realistic. I know I went through this early in my adult years. I'm trying to create like this, just so many traditions and this art of, just this high expectation about what it needed to be. Some of my funnest traditions came about more as a joke and naturally, just because I stopped being so serious about it, being practical and just letting things kind of happen and create those things more organically and naturally. And then it is a time to set differences aside, right? Maybe Christmas or the holidays, Thanksgiving, whatever holidays you celebrate this time of year. Maybe this is a good time to sort of say, is this really the time to solve what happened 5 years ago at that family function, or the feelings of difference we have? So the ability to say, compartmentalize a little bit can come in handy. And of course, sticking to a budget, which we're going to get into in here in a minute. And then planning. We talked about planning. When you can, and you're now able to do that. It's not too late, right? It's November 9th. You can sort of plan some of the activities so you don't find yourself kind of rushing to create those experiences. And then, of course, planning for delays and setbacks. You have to decide what's worth it to you. I'm going to tell you right now, some of you are going to think I'm crazy. I have never once ever gone to a Black Friday sale. I made a decision that if I have to pay something closer to full price, which there's a lot of ways to not pay full price without doing Black Friday. It's a little bit of a ruse that that's the only way. But it's not worth it to me. Now, you have to make your own decisions. Some people I'll tell you this, if you enjoy getting up early and standing in line and kind of elbowing out, and like, some people enjoy that. And if you enjoy it, do it. But if you find yourself miserable, ask yourself, I saved $20 on that skateboard. Is it worth it? Did I, is that worth my mental health? Is it worth everything that went along with it? So you kind of have to decide, it's just not just something I do, but decide. I personally, and I'm not shouting out Amazon here because everybody knows they don't need me to advertise for them, but I personally do a lot of my shopping online, whether it's them or someone else, because I don't like all of the that bustle of the crowds and stuff for shopping. I don't mind crowds for other things, but I don't love it for shopping. Although I like to get out a few times and get to some stores, but I don't think it's be too bad. Some people love that stuff. You just got to know who you are and what works for you. Here's number 7 is probably a tough one for a lot of you, right? How many of you struggle with this one? Learning to say no, learning to have what we like to call boundaries, right? To say there's just some things that it's okay to just sort of not do. I remember a year, it was hard for me. I was just so steeped in tradition that I accepted that because of some circumstances, we weren't going to do a tradition. And when I just accepted that didn't mean everything was ruined, but I found some peace with that, so it's okay to learn to say that. So don't abandon your healthy habits, of course. And the problem with this time of year is when you forget all the other important things. And of course, 9 is take a breather, turn off the holiday stuff sometimes and just live a normal life, enjoy some soothing music, get away from it. As we get in, part of the holidays is New Year's. So one of the things I throw out there is as more and more evidence shows that resolutions, the way we do them, aren't really that effective. Good goal setting is very effective, but the way we traditionally approach resolutions as some ambiguous grand plan that we don't really put into action and we put some high expectations on don't really work. It's better to focus on tangible, realistic goals and set markers and short-term goals towards them. So again, forget about perfection. I think we used to hard on that, and then just get help. Like reach out if there's more help needed, and if this season triggers bigger things for you. So let's talk about the plan and the financial plan. Have maybe you all seen or know the story of Alice in Wonderland? And there's a famous scene towards the beginning of that when she says, would you tell me, please? And she's talking to the Cheshire Cat, which way I ought to go from here. The cat says, that depends a good deal on where you want to go, said the cat. Well, I don't much care where, said Alice. Then it doesn't matter which way you go, said the cat, so long as and then she finishes, so long as I get somewhere. Alice added as an explanation, oh, you're sure to do that, said the cat, if you only walk long enough. And it's a silly story, but it really does highlight what happens, what it means to plan. What do you want to accomplish? So what do you want your financial outlook to be like as a result of the season? You have to be clear about that, because if you just have this general idea, I just want to be better, that's not enough. So you got to get more specific in that. But finances are a challenge. Let's talk about the reasons. In order to really set a goal, you have to really have a reason for it. Like, what's the point? And the why, right? Getting back to the why is so important, because if you only focus on the what, the goal, it just owns you. Like the most important thing about a budget, if you've ever taken a budget class, is to always know you own the budget. It doesn't own you, because it never works when we sort of say the budget is my master and I have to do what it tells me to do. It doesn't work that way. We have to always know I can change the budget tomorrow if I want. Like, I own this budget, but when I do, I have to reckon with it. Like if I just said, you know what, that's not nearly enough money for my eating out budget, I don't like it, I'm rebelling. Then you just sort of have a conversation. Well, then where's it going to come from? That's what budgeting mentality is. That's fine. I can increase my budget, but that means I got less than my something else budget. You're not just rebelling, you're actually creating a new plan. So again, finances are leading cause for marital disruption, divorce. That's part of your why. You want to avoid more problems. Too many times we use retail therapy to help our relationships. So avoiding that. Finances are high contributor to feelings of powerlessness and hopelessness. So again, sometimes it's, retail therapy to feel better, but just like alcohol and other problems, it leaves us feeling worse when we lean on it. And they do cause a lot of significant anxiety. So looking ahead to your future self, your January 1st self, and keeping that in mind is really helpful. Money represents a lot of important things. And unless you recognize that, it'll always sort of like sneak in on you. Money can represent power, right? It's an exchange it represents power and the ability to do things. It represents our values. What we spend tells us what matters to us. It represents how we cope and our security and our freedoms. And of course, when we're in debt, we lose a lot of those freedoms. So how do we do that? Part of this is going to be you're trying to figure out maybe one of you in your relationship is sort of and that's so common this time of years. Someone has that like, let's keep the budget small. Our kids don't need all that. And then someone else like, no, we got to give them the world. So how do we approach that conversation? I find it doesn't work to just sort of like see what you can get away with and see what you can kind of and do this kind of more passive aggressively than just taking it on and having a discussion about it. So let's develop a budget. And here's how you do it. Budgeting the old way. Okay. This is what I want you to do. Now, everyone's got to have, I'm going to come back to what I was about to say. I was going to get into like the methods you use. But before I get into the methods you use, I want to talk about the overall approach. Traditionally, budgets are approached as like the income minuses your expenses and whatever's left over is your savings. And those go towards your goals, the things you want for the future. Okay. It's a little bit, it's okay. And if you live by it, it can be all right, but there's some challenges with that. Maybe the better way is to take your income, then pay yourself. There's an old book called The Richest Man in Babylon, and it's written back in like the 50s or something. And it's kind of an analogy used to help talk about how people can have financial wisdom. It's a short book, but in there's the principle I remember that says that the 10% of all I own is mine to keep. And when you look at that and say, maybe I should pay myself first, pay myself 10% right up front. And myself, what I'm really meaning is my or our goals. So you can do that so quickly that it's just like it's as if your taxes or your health insurance and stuff, you could just treat it like something that's done without you so quickly, you don't even consider it for anything else. It's when you wait that you start to negotiate with how much you really are going to save. So you pay yourself first, and then you have your expenses. And by the way, if you still have other savings, they can also go to your personal goals, but you're inserting a new piece, and that is pay yourself first. Now, what I would recommend now is if it's too late, and some of you are going to have to take the approach to the holidays that, guess what? Too late for all that. I have the same amount of money this month that I have for every other month. The question is, how much debt am I willing to get into for this thing? Because I didn't save. Too late, right? For this year. This year, the decision for you is going to be, if that's your situation, yeah, how much debt am I willing to take on for this season? Maybe it's going to be a little bit. Maybe I don't want to say no to everything when I feel like I can do that, but just know what you're getting yourself into and not doing it haphazardly. And then start to plan for next year and say, part of our budget is X. If we spend, if I just keep the math simple, if I'm going to spend $1,200 at Christmas, I got to save $100 a month and put that aside as a budget. So again, just to kind of go over that concept further is when you pay yourself first, you're mentally establishing a saving priority. There's something really interesting that comes by creating a mentality of saving first. It doesn't just save the money. It starts to make you think more readily. The same, I say it's the same as when I exercise. When I exercise, it doesn't just help me to exercise. It helps me think differently about the way I eat. It helps me think differently about everything else because I have this different mentality. And that's the same thing that happens when you save. So then you're building a cash buffer and creating a better experience. So tips to stay within your budget, okay? Now paying with cash when possible, because that's hard to do now, isn't it? I mean, today's world, cash is almost not even accepted in a lot of places. So are there versions of where it feels closer to cash that you use? You're welcome to kind of share your thoughts, but what ways do you find? I'd love to hear from you. Someone talks about the Acorns app. I like Acorns. I don't get paid by any of these, but I like Acorns. The way I use Acorns is it's a good way to save a little bit of cash. By just saying round up every time I spend. So the way the Acorns works, one of the things you can do several things, but is throughout the year, if I spend $1.25 at the gas station, I automatically take 75 cents, round up to the next dollar and puts it in a special account. It's a little way to just round up And it's like taking your change and saving it. Like the old equivalent, if you used cash, taking all the coins and putting it in a jar and see what it amounts to. It's a similar concept. And so I like the acorns for that. It's a good way. I like for paying cash, Venmo is kind of like paying cash if you tie it to your checking account. And if your checking account, if you use debit, that's another way to do it, right? There's ways to sort of pay cash. The downside is you're not looking at the cash. There's something missing. That's one of the problems we have is when you used to look at cash, you realize what you were spending. Like you'd counted it out, like, wow. And as you're counting, you're going, how many hours does it take for me to make this? Have you all done that math when you're spending? How many hours is it going to take me to make this up? It's when you're just paying, swiping, it's harder to do that. But if you use a debit card, then you're kind of paying cash because you're not just saying, well, wherever it goes, if I'm going into debt, who knows, right? So finding ways that are like paying cash. And by the way, some people still do it like the old envelope approach. They just put cash in an envelope, so this is how much I get for Christmas. And when it runs out, you're done. Creating a specific funds. Then one of the nice things about living in today's day is you can create a lot of virtual accounts that are like, this is for this is for that. So you take advantage of those tools to help you do that. Sometimes, just like any goal, telling somebody what you're doing is like a form of accountability, and you're supporting each other. So when you go out and you said, one of the ways I'm going to help get to this holiday season is I decided I'm going to eat out so much less because that's where I'm going to, man, I spend $200 eating out every month. And that's, boy, I can buy several gifts for $200. So I'm going to not eat out really. And then when you're going to lunch with them and they're like, hey, and you're not going to eat, like they can help you with those goals, right? So, don't create bills you won't be able to pull and pay in full at the end of the month. That's a general advice thing, right? Try to avoid things that that you're going to take a long time. Avoid late fees by paying, of course, on time. And then this is old advice: visit the ATM more than once a week. This is central to this type of year. Like, I am guilty of this. My wife should probably be teaching this better than I am, and I'm glad that she keeps me in check. Because sometimes I buy holiday gifts just because they shine. They're shiny and it's fun. And I just realized, man, I have gifts that I've given myself. I don't want to sound like way overgive, but because I don't. But I've given him something before, and I come in and it's still in the pack. There's still a toy from last Christmas in the package under his bed. And that's when I realized that wasn't even a want. Not only did I not identify wants versus needs very well or whatever, that wasn't even a want. That was unnecessary. It looked cool on the shelf, right? So, of course, the holidays isn't just about needs, right? You're not just saying, hey, if you don't need it, I'm not giving it to you. But it's recognizing even the level of want, what is in that? And we often put more pressure than the others. I have found that our kids can be more responsible than we give them credit for. They can be more understanding than we give them credit for. If we talk to them, maybe we prepare them that this has been a rough year. What does that mean for our family? So yeah, you don't want surprises on Christmas morning if they wake up and there aren't as many gifts. So you probably want to have that discussion with them about what's a good way for us to make the most of this holiday season. We might have to spend a little less, or maybe if there's ways we need to work together to be creative to still give good gifts, make homemade gifts or meaningful things. Tradition that my kids started on their own, I don't even take any credit for, and they loved it when they were younger, was they started wrapping up gifts of things they already owned and gave them to each other. And they loved it so much that was the first gift they wanted to exchange on Christmas. They called them home gifts, and they would just wrap up something they already owned. Oh my gosh, you gave me your stuffed animal, So getting creative and including the family in a discussion about what's meaningful to us. And I think the more you have those, you go out and look at the lights, hey, we went out and did something for somebody else. We did a charitable thing. We spent, I think personally, $50 spent on another needy family feels so much better for everyone, including the family, than $50 spent on something for each other. So finding ways to do that. Some families, like if you're talking about extended families, have opted to reduce the stress by having discussions about, rather than giving everybody a gift, you're drawing gifts, or instead of even doing gifts like that, it's a white elephant party, right? Don't be afraid to say, you know, let's get creative and find ways. We started that with our kids. It's kind of a white elephant thing for a Christmas party. We used to have like a party beforehand, a couple of weeks before, and then we nice gifts then and on Christmas. I'm like, why are we duplicating so much of that? So we're like, that's silly. So we do a decent gift on Christmas, but on the party, the rule is it's got to be under $15 for a white elephant. I think it's maybe even $10. Like, and then you have to get real creative to do something like that these days. So, you know, how do I identifying a want versus a need? How do I feel? Identifying, and again, what's the purpose? Is this part of my spending plan? Is this something I need or want? How long does it take me to earn this? As I talked about before, do I have other things I would rather have this money for? That's an important one. Whenever I just spend, I'm making a decision. I'm either gonna have to pay for this a lot more later on in credit and all the interest that goes into that, or I'm gonna lose something else. And it's never free. Like I'm making a decision about something else I don't want. And again, getting back to the why. So it's staying conscientious. I'd love to hear what's worked for you. I'd love to give you some of your thoughts. Someone mentioned they used a platform called Starfish. Gift cards generated on the spot as payment. Interesting. I've never heard of that one. Someone said, I love utilizing my sub accounts to transfer money into saving. Yes, sub accounts are nice to have for, we know this is for this purpose. And I would recommend, if you really like sort of the discipline, when you create a budget, put all that budget into one source, right? That you and your partner, whoever else involved, that you're budgeting with, are going to use. And you know that when it's gone, right? It's a finite amount of money. So you're going to have to sit there when you're buying stuff and go, one of these things has to go back on the shelf because we don't have it to buy all of these things. I would recommend, if you're in relationships, proactive conversations. Don't wait to have the budget discussion until you're shopping. That it's like, don't plan your diet when you're at the store, right? Write it out. You always make impulsive decisions. So to have discussion first. I know that ruins a lot of the fun for a lot of people. One of the things I do, I'm made fun of in my family, is I'm a spreadsheet guy. I know some of you are not spreadsheet people, or they have apps and stuff too. Every Christmas, and I have one I use, and every year it's tacked on. It goes back like 15 years now. I write in their names, and their names, I write what the gifts are, and I'm keeping track of that because I just kind of spend by gifts. You like find yourself, oh my gosh, I got a lot more than I thought, you know? So I'm keeping track. I even keep track of how much it's costing so I can kind of keep things even and stay in a budget. I need that for myself. Other ideas, what's working for you folks? I'd love to hear ways that you have managed the stress, the financial aspect of that during the holidays. Any other ideas that you have? As I was mentioning, there are some apps out there. I just a simple one, it's called Christmas List. And in there you put the names of people in, you put in the budget as how much you're planning on spending on that person. And then you can put in, as you buy things, and I use this, by the way, and the spreadsheet, that's how weird I am. Because I can do that while I'm out shopping. And I put in how much it costs, how much, and it keeps track for every person, how much you're spending. It's a simple little app. There's other things like that. I'm not seeing any other ideas coming in. Anybody have, one says they use Amex and Amazon reward points. Yeah, you can use some of those things to help, so it's less out of pocket. Prepare the kids earlier for reality that might not match their friends. Yes, and it's amazing. We don't give our kids enough credit. I don't. There might be some disappointment, of course. Kids love, love an Xbox if they could get it, right? Whatever it might be. But I think when we involve them, and I will tell you this, and even if they're disappointed, here's something we've lost sight of. Disappointment is not trauma, right? It is not bad parenting to say no to your kids, for them to have to. It is good for children to learn to go without. We sometimes think, that the path through childhood is having no problems. And that is in fact not true. But when we are kind about it and we talk with them about it and we share the kids, well, your kids might learn some great lessons. I can reflect on some of my best experiences in my youth when my family, not to get too personal here, but I went from riches to rags, the wrong direction when I was young. Had it all and kind of lost a lot of it. And there was even Christmases where we knew that neighbors were leaving stuff on our doorstep. We were the family that needed some of that. And yet some of my fondest memories of some of those years when we tightened up, and it made me feel closer to my family, and my parents included me in discussions about that. So, you might have a different experience than a neighbor, and that's okay. I got some great ideas coming in. Flex CDs that mature each November. Great. Yeah, that's awesome. Those are things that those things are nice because they're sort of like harder to get to. You got to have to pull them out. So those are great to have. And then it kind of every year it's actually built a little interest and it's kind of worked for you. And now you can pull it out and use it. Look for cheap and free activities. Yes, you can compensate for the gifts. Sometimes the gift is it. Remember, I talked about love languages. That's only one, right? Giving gifts of service, compassion, physical affection, words of affirmation, or other gifts we give. We compensate, and you might find you love them more anyway. So put cheap stuff out from Santa and wrap the more expensive stuff, as I learned that kids at school might not have gotten. Nice Santa gift is anything at all. Little kids talk about what they got at school. Yeah. I have 6 kids and they each get one thing they ask for. Some are expensive and some are very inexpensive. I remember we made a conscious decision, and this might sound funny, but when we got a list from our kids every year, my wife and I said, every year I want there to be at least one thing on that list they don't get. So that you're torturing your kids, right? I just think it's good to be accustomed to not being entitled to getting everything you want, and knowing every year there's just probably something I'm not going to get. And to making the most of it. Like my company offers a savings program that goes from January 1st to November 15th. We choose the amount we want with help. Oh, wow. That's awesome. So what a great company. How forward thinking is that? So a lot of the ideas that we're getting might be too late now. So this year you're making do, and you're going to have to do a lot of the ways to be creative to make the most of the season. But for next year, maybe it's an opportunity to say, okay, what are we going to do to make next year? Because the problem is most people think of that in reverse, right? I'm going to spend now and then I'll make up for it between now and next November. Problem is paying all that interest, and it often doesn't happen because life happens. And it's a lot less fun paying for that new skateboard in next March than in last March, right? So those are great options. I appreciate all the good input. As always, I feel like you guys come in with great ideas. So thanks for sharing all of those. So I appreciate your thoughts, all your input, and I want to share another clip because this is again this is one of my favorite.
Before we begin, since this is Aunt Bethany's 80th Christmas, I think she should lead us in the saying of grace.
Great. What dear? Grace. The race 30 years ago.
They want you to say grace. The blessing.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation with liberty and justice.
Amen.
Amen.
Catherine, this turkey tastes half as good as it looks. I think we're all in for a very big treat.
Save the neck for me, Clark.
Okay, Eddie.
Sorry,
Why are you crying?
I told you we put it in too early.
Just a little dry, it's fine. Here's the heart.
Someone asked what movie that is. That is a classic Christmas Vacation, one of the best ever. They mentioned earlier, you roll with what you're given. Whatever happens, you just take it, right? You just roll with what comes. So I appreciate you all being here. I guess I would just kind of conclude by having you consider, what would you do? I'll ask you to consider what's that thing you're going to do to make this year different. Instead of some general idea of trying to do better, be more specific than that. Come away with 1 or 2 goals. And I love the idea, live in the moment. There's mindfulness, whatever may come be, debt or high water, right? Just seize the moment and be happy with where you are. So thank you all for being here, for letting me be a part of this day and getting ready for your holidays. So I hope wish you all the very best. And again, thanks for attending this, and keep watching out for more of these seminars.